In the last episode, Nicole and Tony's relationship continued to have hurdles, especially when it came to their jobs and living situation. With a brand new baby and multiple stressors put upon her, Nicole fell into a deep, dark depression as she simply tried to keep her head above water. This eventually led to her asking for a divorce from Tony. Of course, he begged and pleaded for her to stay, and they ended up moving to Florida to be closer to family and create a new beginning for themselves. While Nicole stood by her man and his new business, things went sideways when Tony began acting in a way that was completely out of the norm. So what does Nicole do? Well, like any woman, she went undercover to figure out what he wasn't telling her. And let's just say shocked was the understatement of the century.
And, there was plenty of times where, he wouldn't pick up the phone when I was calling at that time, or wasn't answering the text messages I was sending. And so that was probably the first indicator that, something was really, vibes were off. Vibes were
off. Oh, yeah.
And she had an Instagram, and she had photos of every single place he had been over the last, 6 weeks.
Shut up.
Welcome to Ex-Wives Undercover.
Liars, cheaters, and love cons.
I'm Amber.
And I'm Athena.
First we told our story, and now we're sharing all of your craziest and most heart-wrenching stories of love gone wrong. Sometimes we laugh.
And sometimes we cry.
But more importantly,
we stand together. All right, girl. You ready to do this?
Let's do it.
The views, information, or opinions expressed on our show by our guests are solely the views of those individuals involved, and by no means represent absolute facts. Opinions expressed by the host and guests may change at any time. Our podcast and YouTube show may at times cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to suicide, abuse, violence. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
He had been a collector of firearms, so he had kind of gotten into that little niche group of people, had some contacts or whatever, and decided, okay, well, and he kind of started it on the side as a side business, importing parts and stuff, and kind of just doing sale of that, kind of drop shipping in a way. That led him to being introduced to who ended up being his business partner, a gentleman from Switzerland, and that company coming to the United States.
This new company of Tony's was funded by 2 Israeli investors. Tony did not contribute a dime financially and only had a 10% share in the company initially.
The talk of bringing this business to the United States had been going on for a while. People had been trying to convince him to open the market here in the United States. And there were other investors that were talking about it, and those just happened to be, the Israelis. So those 2 people came in and fronted most of the money. We didn't put up any money for it at all, because we didn't have any, which I think is a key part to the rest of everything, that we didn't have money. We don't come from money. We did not have money. We had just come out of bankruptcy. He, was like, okay, I'm going to take just a reasonable salary. I think it was $80,000 a year as the CEO and manager of the business. And I'll do all the day-to-day operations. I'll do all of that stuff. You just give me the money and I'll do the things. And for the first year, couple years of it, it was, it looked like the trajectory was that it was going to be successful.
You talk about getting really hammered with the Israelis and coming back and mentioning that this was the first time that you were actually scared. What was he doing or saying that was making you feel that way?
So I hadn't been out with them. They were out without me. I was at home with our son, and he had to be carried up the stairs. He was acting very erratic. He was saying things that not necessarily in a threatening manner, but could be. I don't know. It was a very weird line where it was not overtly threatening, but it was kind of covert, kind of behind the don't fuck with me, but and he was at one point looking for one of the firearms that we own. And now we didn't have any bullets or ammunition. So I didn't, like I wasn't like, oh, but like my thought was like, what the fuck are you doing?
So what
And
triggered the behavior? Was we got home and you're like, dude, you're hammered in front of me and your son, or you're being too loud? I mean, did you approach him and you're like, hey, what the hell? And then that triggered him?
After the incident in Spain, he was very, very sensitive about saying anything about his drinking. And it was, when are you going to let this go? Why do you have to keep bringing it up? Why do we have to keep rehashing this all the time? And I'm just like, because it keeps happening. Like,
because you were just carried up our stairs. That's why.
I didn't think that I was being unreasonable, but he made me feel like I was being unreasonable.
While all of this was percolating, Tony fired his accountant. Nicole's best friend was actually looking for a job, so it was a no-brainer that she would work for his new company. And don't forget that Nicole was still focused on getting her master's degree amongst the chaos. But Tony was anything but supportive and excited for his wife.
First of all, he was late to my graduation. He didn't travel with my parents, even though they were there. He insisted that they travel separately. And like I said, there was comment after comment after comment. Education means nothing. It doesn't mean anything. You're not as smart as you think you are. Yeah, I mean, he put it down at every opportunity. You could tell in all the pictures he really didn't want to be there. He didn't want to participate, didn't want to, celebrate or do anything like that. It was always snide remarks. And, really, I graduated in 2017. So all of the things that kind of led to like a lot of the deterioration in our relationship happened between 2016 and 2017, some of it being political, with the election of Mr. Trump. I was told that if I voted for, I think it was Hillary Clinton at the time, that I was voting against my family's best interest and that I was betraying him. I mean, the betraying thing came up. It was a theme throughout our relationship that I was betraying him. And I don't know if he was setting that up in his head so that he could eventually do this and discard me and not have, I mean, I've read plenty of narcissist books, and one of them being, if you ladies have not seen it, it's called Psychopath Free, and it is a great read. It is a quick read, but it's great. It's full of a lot of information. I think they talk about 30 red flags up front. He had 28.
Was this ever an issue, or did he assume you had the same beliefs as him, like leading up to I know that was a very polarizing presidential campaign, but so did you have issues with it before?
So, I wanted to go into politics from like the time I was in high school. So I've always been very plugged into the political culture, the things that are going on, bills that are being passed, that kind of stuff. And when we first met, he wasn't. He didn't, he voted, but didn't really look at the issues. So a lot of that came from, him and I talking when we would be in the car, in these long car rides when we were in DC. And living in DC kind of, I think, if you've ever worked in DC, it is a bubble. And it's everybody lives, breathes, eats, shits fucking politics. It is all day. And everything it's so interconnected there, from everything from where you're working, how the roads are. It's just, you can't escape it.
I wonder, maybe this is totally not correct, but being that his new business is now in the weaponry business, sure, and that typically is something that a Republican would be for, if I'm right.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if he felt by you saying, I'm not going to vote for Trump, it means I don't support you. Or is it just, he was just a dick all around?
I mean, I at this point tend to believe the latter.
After the issues with politics and everything else, Nicole felt that she probably would have left him, but she promised him she wouldn't. So she stuck it out. And by 2019, Tony's company was awarded a contract with the U.S. military and therefore would be traveling a lot more. This also meant that he would be missing many of the major milestones for their young son.
I think, from the very beginning, because my son and I were alone for about 15 months before we kind of were reunited because of the situation. I think I was always the default parent. But he did miss, I think, most of his birthdays, most of them. I don't know that he was there especially after he started the business, he wasn't there. Some of these trips were to get contracts and make connections and get retailers to carry the ones that he was importing and all of that kind of stuff. And
Right.
I understand that that's important, which is why I never gave him shit about it, because I was just like,
Yeah.
okay, whatever.
The couple were finally able to go on their first ever family vacation. But of course, Tony did what he always did and was less than enthusiastic.
You go there, you're half the time North Shore, half the time you guys get to do the Alani Disney Resort, which looks amazing.
It is.
And it's a lot of work. You're researching tickets, your hotels, dual places to stay. There's a lot of work that goes into that.
Yeah.
And so, was he appreciative of that? I know you say that he kind of picked apart a lot. There were fights, arguments. Can you walk us through, like, what could possibly stir him up? I mean, you're in Hawaii, for goodness sakes. Like,
me. He
Aw.
would
Such a dick.
and honestly, some of this I didn't really realize until later, until well after, that this was the pattern. He knew what things made me anxious and would go out of his way to poke at me about it, like in an indirect way, if that makes sense. Make me late for things. If I had a plan, change it. If I had a this, like just whatever. And it would put me in a mood, and then he'd like poke, 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 and then I'd explode. And he'd be like, oh, see, this is why we can't go on vacations. This is why we can't go anywhere. This is why I can't take you anywhere. This is why, so it was, I think classic reactive abuse. Like textbook, really. Poke, 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 explode. Oh, see how you are? This is why I can't deal with you.
By the summer of 2019, it was all coming to a head.
I mean, I think the lead up to all of that year, I was fairly checked out too. I mean, he wasn't alone in the pulling away. I was checked out. I think I expressed to you, I had made that promise back when we moved down to Florida, that if we moved to Florida, I would never threaten again to leave. So I stuck to that, and I felt like, okay, that's my word, that's my bond. I'm a not loyal, but like I'm somebody who is, honor to my word, if you will. And I was like, I guess this is just my life. I had like come to kind of accept it, and was like, okay, I'm a married single mom. I'm not going to have any help. So, and it wasn't like I was out dating other people or talking to other people or trying to, yeah, I started working out and I had lost some weight, but like I wasn't trying to leave even that way. Like I wasn't having conversations with anybody. I just didn't want to be heavy anymore, and I wanted to, work on myself for me. But I think because it was too similar to me starting to lose weight when I was in Maryland, I think he obviously, I believe, was planning this for quite some time during that year.
So you, again, mentioned you never really suspected him of cheating, regardless of all the travel. Like, those things didn't cross your mind, had never really ever been an issue for you guys. But you did say that you noticed changes, and he's very pattern routine. I feel like most men are. And so that would always be a sign for me, is like, that's out of the ordinary. That's not your normal. So what types of things were you noticing in his behavior that seemed a little off schedule or just out of ordinary?
So he had taken a trip he went to Switzerland, then he was home for 2 weeks, Then he went to Brazil, was home for 48 hours, and then went back to Switzerland.
Okay, let's talk about the morning walks.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was in between the two trips. So in between Switzerland 1 and Brazil, he was getting up at like 2 or 3 in the morning and going on these like long, like 4-hour walks. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? And he was like, well, because we live in Florida and it's September, so it's hot. So I'm like, okay, it was the end of August, beginning of September. So I was like, okay, I can see that, not wanting to walk in the sun. And, he's a dude, so he doesn't have the same fears that women do. We're out walking at night, so I kind of was like, that's weird, but okay. Because he was saying that he wanted to, get exercise. And I was like, well, I don't agree with it. But during those 2 weeks, I had so much anxiety about whether he was going to get home on time because he wouldn't be back from his walk in time before I had to leave for work. And I was like, are you gonna get am I okay to leave? Am I good to go to work? Do you and there was plenty of times where he wouldn't pick up the phone when I was calling at that time, or wasn't answering the text messages I was sending. And so that was probably the first indicator that something was really, vibes were off. Vibes were off.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Us as women, we know it. It's like, meh, antenna up.
Before the Brazil trip, there was a hurricane that was headed towards Florida, and he was flying out of Miami. And it was this big, I have to change my flight to leave early, and I have to, and I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you rushing to get out of here? And he and I had a huge fight about it, because I was like, this is insane. I said, you're insane for trying to push this up. I said, why are you trying to push this so hard? It didn't make sense to me. And when things don't make sense to me, of course, like any woman, you just keep coming at it until a direction fits. And so he left, and things again were weird, because it was weird that 2 weeks prior to him going, it was weird because of the walks and all that stuff. And while he was in Brazil, there was a 3-day period where he did not talk to me and did not respond to text messages, did not reach out to me. And of course, I didn't reach out to him because I was trying to be not clingy, because it obviously triggered my abandonment issues. And I was trying to be, okay, let's be logical. Let's be, okay, if he's not texting me, I'm not going to text him. And it went on for 3 days until I finally was like, hello? And he tried to play it off oh, well, I was just busy. And I'm just like, that had never occurred throughout the entirety of our relationship to that point. He had never not talked to me for a whole day, let alone multiple days. And I found the whole thing very, I remember I bawled in the shower. I had one of those really exhausting, heaving, crying, just trying to figure out what was happening, because I couldn't figure it out. I was just beside myself, blaming myself. Well, what did I do? Why is he treating me, worse than, but it was a very, very, that trip to Brazil was very, very hard for me.
So clearly all of these things are popping up. You're seeing these, red flags, and you've got this gut feeling now. Walk us through the events where you wake up at 3 a.m. and you decide that you're going to get on your son's iPad.
I woke up, and of course, whenever you're going through any of these type of things, I couldn't sleep. And I'm laying in bed, and I'm just I'm running through everything. And I'm just I'm reading through his text, and I'm just trying to look for anything that could be a crumb of a clue. And as I was sitting there, I said, iTunes. It's on our son's iPad. It's logged into his account. And so I went and checked iMessages, and there was a bunch of correspondence between him and his sister, where he had sent her a picture of her passport which I also thought was fucking weird. And a whole bunch of other photos and screenshots and talking about how, oh, it's going to hurt Jess if she finds out. Gee, you fucking think?
So there's a picture sent to Tony's sister from Tony with a picture of whose passport?
The woman in question. I took that name and of course I Googled it because
Of course. Hello.
that's what you do, right? And she had an Instagram, and she had photos of every single place he had been over the last 6 weeks.
Shut up.
He wasn't in the photos, but
yeah. Well.
Then I went back to the iPad and went into the photo portion because I had forgot about the photos being linked as well. And I was scrolling through and I didn't see anything until I now, just a little bit of background. I have an Android, so I don't have an iPhone, so I'm not really 100% sure on how all of that stuff works because, again, I don't use it. So I was scrolling and I saw this folder called Hidden.
Oh, I knew that was coming. I'm like, oh no, don't open it. Don't open it. What'd you find?
I don't want to throw up for you, but
I know.
Hundreds. And when I say hundreds of photos, and they all match the Instagram posts. He flew around the Jesus statue in Rio de Janeiro. Those were the 3 days that he didn't talk to me, by the way. That matched up, because math was mathing at that point. And in the hidden folder was also a wonderful bunch of naked photos of her. So I got very intimate and up close.
Our faces are like, oh God, no. Ew, no. Look, at 3:00 in the morning, nonetheless. Now you're wide awake.
I walked, I think I went back and looked at my Fitbit from that day. I walked 38,000 steps that day. Because I had just imagine. Paced, I don't have an island, but I have a galley kitchen that's sort of it's a circle. You can kind of walk around the part where the sink is. And I just, if there could have been a hole worn in the floor, because I was like, what am I going to do? 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 What am I going to say?
And that's exactly what I want to know. Are you Amber, you motherfucker, freaking out, calling him at 3:00, or are you Athena strategizing on the left?
We strategize.
Smart or dumb? Smart or dumb?
Well, let me just say, it reminds me of when Brandon Ben pocket dialed me the morning of my baby shower. Mm-hmm. You're just that fight or flight, that adrenaline. You're not going back to sleep. You're pacing. You're just like you drank 100 bottles of Coca-Cola or something. You are awake. You are furious.
If my stomach could have been in my left toe, I had this sinking feeling. My stomach was in knots, and I was just like, what the fuck? And it probably took me a solid hour to really process what the fuck I was looking at.
But Amber is right. I would have strategized if I were you at that moment.
I did.
You're right, Amber.
I did.
Yeah, that's why I was like, smart? Dumb.
Well,
I would have been on the phone. You pick up right now, you piece of shit. I would have been horns out.
Well, I kind of
stab you.
I kind of did a touch of both. I kind of did a touch of both, a little bit.
A little bit tiger, a little strategizing.
I texted him and I was like, I'm up and I miss you and I haven't been able to talk to you. What's going on? What's happening?
Let's FaceTime.
No. No. And right. So I said, so he was like, okay, I'll try to make time later today. And it was another one of those, I could tell I was being blown off.
Yeah.
And so I said, I know I'm not young and Ukrainian. I was like, but I'd like a little attention.
Oh, yeah.
And
Take the phone, you dumbass.
And the phone.
He probably shit himself.
He said, what did you mean by that? And I said, with the guy, I said, he dates Russian and Ukrainian women. He goes, Like, I could tell he didn't believe me, but I was just like, that's what I'm going with. And for the rest of that trip, I just was like, I miss you. Let's talk when we get home. And, and all the time I was hiring a divorce attorney and filing for divorce.
I love that.
Yes.
You go,
I
girl.
love that too.
Those bank accounts. I mean,
I love
whatever
you,
you
miss
do.
you. I'm gonna go ahead and take everything that's mine.
Seriously.
There's a doghouse out back you can stay at.
Right.
I just kind of was like, I don't know how this is going to go. I didn't know how hard, like, he was going to fight me or how nasty it was going to get. So I was trying to be very, very proactive in protecting myself as far as, getting that out the way. And I have no doubt in my mind, one, I don't believe that he ever thought I would do it without talking to him first. I think he thought he would have the opportunity to talk me out of it or try to convince, because that's what he had done in the past, right? Is to talk you down, talk you into submission, word salad you to death, make you, gaslight you, make you believe that you didn't see what you saw, or that it was temporary, or that it was a mistake, or whatever fuckery he would have came up with. I just took that opportunity away.
Good job.
Oh, and how did you not? Didn't it send the bitch a message? I saw your vagina. Like, how do you not send that message? Like, do you know you're fucking a married man right now? Ooh, I'm fired up.
Long game. I was playing chess.
Oh, smart.
I was playing the long game, and I was like, I said, because, I am a child of divorce, and I wanted it to be, because, you know what, honestly, like I said, I wasn't happy either. Like,
Yeah,
so it
you had
wasn't
nothing to lose.
like I had nothing to lose when it came to that. So while I was devastated, I had been grieving the loss of this marriage for years.
Yeah.
By that point, I kind of was like, okay, this is my out. And I think I mentioned it to Amber. I think I needed him to do something of this magnitude to
Totally.
Force the issue for me, because I think I was not comfortable. I don't want to say comfortable but change is hard. Change is hard. And, when you don't know what that's going to look like, and, moreover, I didn't want to fail my son and have divorced parents and have that be, so when he first came home, really, we were very amicable that first week. We went out to dinner as a family a couple of times. Like, I was very magnanimous about it. He wrote up this sheet, which ended up being pretty much what I got in the divorce agreement. So we talked about all of that, and I just was like, I want you to have access to our son as much as you want. I don't want to keep him from you. I want you to have a relationship with him. And of course, all of this is before I've really unpacked all of the narcissistic shit and all of the other, abusive shit that I didn't realize I was enduring at the time. Said, okay, can I just stay at the house for a week? And I said, okay, fine. And he went like he was going to go upstairs, and I was like, you're not sleeping in the bed, like, no.
Yeah.
And so he was down on the couch, and it was like the last day before he was getting ready to leave. I don't know if he was going on another trip or if I just, was like, whatever. But she FaceTimed him, and he answered it in front of our son. Get the fuck out of my house. I said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I said, and then he said what I believe is the most ignorant shit I think I heard the entire time. And he's like, well, think about it from her perspective.
So that just happened. And did we mention that Tony actually met this Ukrainian woman from his Swiss business partner? Yep. It's no wonder he didn't want Nicole meeting this guy.
Next time on Ex-Wives Undercover.
I want to make sure that women don't feel alone, because it is an incredibly lonely feeling. Even if you have a support system, even if you have parents who love you, even if you have everybody there in your corner, you feel like you fucked it up, you did something wrong, what did I do to deserve this? It all turns inward. So I don't want anybody else to feel alone. I want them to feel like they have a community, which I think is what you built. A community of people who have similar stories that help other women cope, understand what's happening to them, deconstruct what happened to them if they don't understand what happened, how they got here, to know that strong women can still be abused and it doesn't mean that you're weak. There's the stigma of all of those things too. And I think it's an amazing thing to put the message out there that, one, you're not alone. Two, you're not weak. If anything, you're stronger than anybody else could ever imagine, because nobody could go through the shit that you went through.
And once again, if you like what you're hearing, please leave us a 5-star review and make sure to join our private Facebook group for even more juicy info. You can also find us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And of course, you can always visit our site at www.xwivesundercover.com.